This is our 17th Global Sales Transformation event. We have run these consistently at the London Stock Exchange. All bar two have been run here. The other two, one has been in Singapore and one has been in America. And the reason why we want it here is because sales has got to be at the core of driving business results. And of course, at the stock exchange, there's no better place, to be. So for us, it's been very symbolic that, that we host these events here. We've got a fantastic set of speakers for this afternoon. The theme, as you know, is talent to thrive. But I want to start off by introducing the two people that are going to kick off the event, who are also central to what we do. I'd like to say Louise Sutton, who is the Academy Director. Louise is currently doing doctorate around the topic of apprenticeships, and she's going to be sharing some of her learnings from that. Louise has been absolutely instrumental in where Consalia are today in terms of making the apprenticeship initiative possible. And we also have, working with Louise Patrick, who is the Managing Director of the Institute of Sales Professionals, again, an organisation that we 100% need to support and encourage participation with. If we could ask you to kick off the afternoon. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
So, good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to say what a pleasure it is to be here at this event. I've heard about it. I've not managed to come before, so it's lovely. My first one. So it's lovely to see it in reality. And also a big thanks to Consalia for inviting us here, and to Phil and his team for putting the event together. I know how much work it takes to put these things together, so huge congratulations and thank you for your commitment to doing this, because discussing and debating and learning more about the sales profession is so critical, because it's a theme that Louise and I are going to be visiting, is how poorly it is visited often in education. So my name is Patrick Joiner. I'm the MD at the Institute of Sales Professionals. You'll be relieved to know that I'm not going to launch into a sales pitch for the Institute and why you all ought to be members and encouraging your teams to become members, but I will be outside after the event if you want to have that conversation. What we are going to be talking about instead is looking at the current state of play in terms of where we are with apprenticeships today, the journey that's brought us here, what the current state of play is, setting the context and motivations around there, where we are with sales apprenticeships, and really just some of the trends that we're noticing out in the marketplace, things that are happening for sales professionals, particularly young sales professionals entering the profession, and some little views on what we'll need to do next. I think it's all very well to look at Middlesex University and Consalia and the Institute and say this is our job to promote the profession of selling. Actually, it's all of our responsibilities. Everybody in this room has a part to play in putting sales where it needs to be in the public consciousness and in the consciousness of our employers in this country, and in supporting the professional development of salespeople. As Phil absolutely rightly said, it is central to the success of our businesses, and now more so probably than at any other time in recent history. So it's a shared responsibility, and we're very proud to be sort of figureheads in that, but we can't do it on our own. It's a part to play for everybody in the room.
Yep.
So what we are seeing, and we talk a lot to our corporate members about the current state of play in sales, what we know is that there is a shortfall in sales talent. Recent research showed that there are currently around 50,000 sales vacancies unfilled in the UK. And all the employers we talk to are crying out to find good salespeople to come and work for them. And what they're finding they're having to do is pay over the odds for maybe not quite such good salespeople. And that's definitely having an impact on the levels of success. The skills fade is a well-recognised factor. It happens anyway. All of us over time forget the things that we know. We develop bad habits. But over the last couple of years, with the increase in home working and hybrid working, what we have lost in our organisations is that informal learning that goes on around the office. The sidebar conversations, the overhearing things, that incidental learning, we've lost that. And with so many salespeople working in splendid isolation, there is nobody to tell them when they start developing bad habits. So that skills fade is accelerating at a frightening rate. I used to do a lot of sales training, and towards the end of the time when that's all I was doing, I was going in to work with companies, and we were billing something as advanced sales skills for senior sales professionals. What we were delivering was fundamental selling skills, because people had just got out of the habit of doing things right. So that ongoing learning is so important in the sales world. And one of the challenges is that it's not a career of choice at the moment for school leavers. I'd have almost actually put the next 3 bullet points in reverse order. Sales is inadequately represented in business education at both secondary and tertiary level. Even when people are going in to do a business studies A-level or a business studies degree, very rarely do you see even a module on sales. They look at all the other business functions, but not sales, which is madness, because almost all of those graduates are going to spend at least some time in sales when they graduate, if it's not going to be their career. The negative reputational legacy that sales has, and this is the last time I'm going to talk about it because we need to change the narrative around that, but because they don't hear about it in school, because it's not positioned as a profession, their only exposure to sales are those ridiculously stereotyped tropes we see in the media, we see in comedy shows on the TV about the negative impression of selling. Nobody is actually communicating the centrality that sales has to play in commerce. The fact that it's not represented. In fact, I had a scary conversation with a young person. Most of us in sales, if we're really truly honest, we use the expression, we fell into sales. Yeah, very few of us set out with that as our ambition in life. I was talking to a young web developer, actually an app developer, about developing the ISP app. And she told me that amongst her friends, they were all consciously avoiding falling into sales. They actually have an aversion to it because of so many of the things that we've just talked about. And that's the responsibility of all of us to change that impression. And then when it comes into the workplace and we're developing our sales professionals, one of the challenges is how fragmented the sales training sector is. There are a few fabulous organizations and businesses such as Consalia who do a fantastic job in training salespeople. There are also thousands and thousands and thousands of individuals, a bit like I used to be as a self-employed sales trainer, going around doing sales training. And I think I did a great job. I like to think I did a great job, and I'm sure they all do, but it is so fragmented that to get any kind of consistency or comparability across the piece is really difficult, let alone to be able to begin to measure things, ridiculous notions like return on investment on sales training. And I think that's a real challenge for the sales training marketplace and a real challenge for employers to be able to demonstrate the importance and the value to the organization of actually investing in developing their salespeople. And I think that comparability and transferability of training and the awards that people get from it is so important. When we look at the Gen Z salespeople entering the workplace right now, the research is telling us if they're entering the workplace age 19, by the time they're 40, they will have had 14 different jobs. So if we're not giving them something during their average 18 months tenure with us that gives them some value to take on with them, then what are we doing to develop the profession? And equally, by the way, we need to be able to see the return on the investment for our businesses with the 18 months they're with us. I think employment is rapidly becoming sort of serial monogamy with young people. We have them for a short time. We've got to make sure we're getting value from them. And the onus, therefore, is on employers, but also training providers and professional bodies to make sure that training delivers value. Because, as we all know, when times get tough, and I have a funny feeling that times might just be about to get a little bit tough, actually probably even before marketing, the sales training budget is the first one to get cut, which of course is completely counterintuitive, because when it gets harder to sell, what we need is more highly skilled salespeople. But because they can't measure the return on the investment, they don't understand it, it's really easy to take it out of the budget. And this is the role that the sales apprenticeships have to play. And Louise, as Phil rightly said, is the expert on all things sales apprenticeships. So I'm going to ask you to say a few words here, Louise.
Okay, thank you. And hello, everybody. So what we've listed here are the full suite of apprenticeships, sales apprenticeships that operate in the B2B sales sector. And the first thing that I'd like you to notice is that they stretch from level 3 all the way to level 7. So we are immediately offering a career path in sales through the apprenticeships, which I think is fantastic. So the two that we have at level 3 are in technical sales, IT technical sales, and that bid and proposal coordinator. But I know we've had people come onto our level 6 program from the level 3 IT technical sales, and they've graduated already. So there are some apprentices who've managed to go through 2 programs since 2016 and start that career path in earnest in sales. The ones we're going to focus on today are the higher and degree apprenticeships, and that's really because that's where Patrick or the ISP and Consalia have, that's our marketplace. So the ISP are the Endpoint Assessment Organisation. EPAO stands for the Endpoint Assessment Organisation, and they are that for the Level 4 Sales Executive. I was involved in the Trailblazer for the Level 4 Sales Executive, as I think Paul was, for BT, and a few people here. And Consalia and Middlesex University were also involved in the Trailblazer group for the Level 6 B2B Sales Professional. What we have here are the higher apprenticeships, and the Level 6 and the Level 7 actually come under the title of degree apprenticeships as well. And they deliver the degrees, and you can see here, BSc, Professional Practice in Business to Business Sales. And then we had an MSc with the Level 7. The government have actually reduced the funding for that, so it's now been delivering a postgraduate diploma, but in professional practice. And they are 2 really important words. Professional practice indicates what's happening, I think, in all apprenticeship programs, and it's that application of learning into the workplace. It is so important. That's where the skills development happens. That's where the personalization of the learning happens. And sometimes we even get theory coming from, new theory emerging from that practice back. So it's really important. And that's something that I think I want all of you to take away in terms of this kind of double loop that happens with professional practice and apprenticeship programs. Okay, so I've got to do this, haven't I? So Patrick, I'm going to pass over to you in terms of the talking through the numbers. I think it's important to think that the IT technical sales, you can see the numbers are higher. One of the very first to be approved in 2016. And of course, the sales executive has quite a number of training providers, which I think influences the numbers as well. But if I can pass through to you.
Yeah. So just in terms of the numbers, there's the level 3 in bids and proposals. The numbers that you see there, those are the numbers of learners currently on programme and who have also passed through the endpoint assessment process. So the numbers are not huge, they're growing. Bids and proposals only 120, just over 1,300 on IT technical sales, nearly 2,000 on the level 4 sales executive. So the numbers are growing. We're seeing employers increasingly, probably for some of the reasons that I discussed earlier, looking to find ways to make themselves more attractive to new employees. One of the things that we know about the Gen Z employee is that they're looking for an employer who will give them professional development, who will give them some value to take on further through their career. So to position yourself as the employer who's going to do that puts you very much at the front of, or the top of the list when the Gen Zers are looking for a potential employer. So we're definitely seeing an increase in that. And that level 4, we are able to work with commercial training organisations who are approved by the Institute to run the apprenticeship. We are also able to work within company training departments. So some larger employers are actually going through the process of becoming accredited to run the apprenticeships for themselves. That does have the benefit, of course, that when you're calling your training levy back in, your apprenticeship levy, you're actually paying it to yourself. So it's quite a good idea if you've got a robust enough system to do that. And also increasingly in the further education sector, colleges are beginning to look at running some of these courses as well. So it's definitely growing. We're also seeing growth, I'm glad to say, in the ISP's own qualifications. So we're an Ofqual regulated awarding body. We offer certificates and diplomas in sales at level 3, 4 and 5. And we're beginning to see employers looking at those as well, which is really encouraging. So that if the apprenticeship for any reason isn't the right solution for you right now, there are other options out there as well. I think the important thing is that we are getting our young salespeople and more experienced salespeople professional development and professional qualifications. We've had a little over 1,000 learners registered to learn at our level 4 diploma level over the last couple of years, so it's growing well. We're also looking at a level 2 certificate. We're approved by Ofqual to award at level 2. And one of the big projects for next year is to talk to our colleagues, particularly in the secondary and FE sector, to talk about how we can build some of those modules into a business studies program that they're offering, so that there is at least some placement there of professional sales skills as part of a general business education. And we're also looking at, or not looking at, we are in the process of modularizing, if there is such a word, the content of our programs, so that we can actually begin to make awards on short courses that cover quite a narrow band of topics, but those awards over time can build up into a full qualification, so that gives that transferability of learning. There are obviously some challenges for some employers around the kind of investment, not just the investment of money, but the investment of time involved in supporting that learning. But those who are being courageous enough to take that step are definitely seeing the benefits. And of course, that opens the gateway through to the higher level apprenticeships as well.
Thank you, Patrick. And yeah, just talking about that career progression, I've mentioned that we've had people come from the level 3 technical sales onto level 6. We're now getting graduates from level 4 inquiring about coming on the level 6, and our very own graduates from the B2B sales saying, when can I do the masters? When can I do the PhD? When can I get onto that senior leadership program? So that hunger for learning, which Rainer talked about this morning, is very much embedded in the apprentices as they go through the different programs. Okay, so now I have a challenge to talk to you about why the higher sales apprenticeships are working so well. And it's a challenge for me because I really have been sort of wading deep through them for a good 6 years now, and I am absolutely passionate about the benefit of apprenticeships. So I will do a whistle-stop tour, but if you want to talk to me about anything, please come and find me after these sessions. I've already talked really about that kind of integration of the work and practitioner experience, but what is so important is that you get that through the on and off the job learning, which is a component of the apprenticeship. And that very much ensures that the learning is going to be relevant to the sector, to the organisation, and to the individual. There are elements in here on this left-hand side which do rely on the culture of the organisation. If you're going to take apprentices on and run apprenticeships, it is so important that you're prepared to invest in doing that well. And so, that bit about the on and off the job learning, you need to have a good line manager. You need to have a good coach to support the apprentices. But the key thing, I think, as well, is that they're learning by doing without debt. And given the kind of current economic crisis and given the looming recession, this is so important for young people to be able to develop a career without debt. My daughter graduated 18 months ago, and her student loan is just increasing monthly at the minute. She's not going to kind of put a dent in that for such a long time. If you can get a degree and 3 years work experience without debt, go for it. Let's all encourage that. Let's make that happen. It's such an important thing that we can do, and it is so important. And that will also help social mobility, which was one of the key drivers for developing the apprenticeship programs from the government in the first place. There's also this whole idea, and I think the next two bullets are really important for me, to develop a learning organisation and building corporate capability. I think that's where the magic happens, if you have that right employer culture. So what do we mean by learning organisation and building corporate capability? So if I quote Peter Senge, he talks about a learning organisation as being one where people are continually learning how to learn. Continually learning how to learn. And the corporate capability is about extending that learning and extending learning reach. So if you have apprenticeship programs, and if you really make the most of the learning that your apprentices are getting and bring it into the organisation, it's going to start building what we call this corporate capability. And linking it back to the title of today, thriving organisations are learning organisations. People learn from one another, and when that happens, there's sparks, and that's when there's innovation. And you need innovation in today's world. We talk about as the world becomes more connected, and the businesses need to become much more agile, and able to cope with the unknown, you need to be able to be innovative. You need to be able to be agile. And so you need that learning organisation. And tapping into the potential of what's coming out from young people who are hungry to learn and to share their learning is so important to develop those learning organisations. I think we've talked about the route to professionalism. We've got level 3 through to level 7, and some people are now, outside of our apprenticeships, also starting the doctorate programmes in sales. And we do need academics in sales, as Patrick said, and we'll cover it later. It's really important to get sales recognised as a profession, to have sales present in universities. So that's an important route, and Christine and Kate will talk about that later. But there are challenges, and I'm not going to talk too long on this slide, but we had a target the government had a target to get 3 million apprentices by 2020 once they launched the new apprenticeships. And at the end of this last academic year, they were just under that. But there's been COVID, there's been many reasons that have impacted, I think, the recruitment of apprenticeships. The number I really want to talk about here is this one where we talk about the under-19s only accounted for 22% of new starts in the last academic year. How can that be? How can under-19s only account for such a small number? What is not happening? What are they not aware of? We need to think about that. We need to, as Patrick said, start really to champion sales apprenticeships and to make people aware of them. I think, the productivity level was also something that, we wanted to increase productivity through the development of skills for the future, for this changing world that we're in. And that was also one of the key drivers for developing the apprentices, and we're still not quite there. But what came out of a recent report is that, which was produced by UVAC, so we have Mandy here from UVAC, and the CMI, is that management apprentices are actually adding to the economy, and that data's there at about £700 million a year. And there's a lot of discourse around apprenticeships. Are they working? Are they not working? Are we making good use of the levy? What else could we do with the levy? But you have to have skills training. You have to make sure that we're having the right skills for the future. And managers also need to be trained. So it is important that we have apprenticeships that operate at that level. So why are the numbers so low? And I've said here, why especially for the sales apprenticeships? Because I think there's an extra reason. We can talk about apprenticeships in general, but there are a couple of things that are very specific to sales apprenticeships. So there is an image problem with apprenticeships. People don't really know what they are. People don't really know what they contain. And this is a really important thing. We have to start, really shouting out, those of you that are on apprenticeship programs, those of you that have graduated, talk about what you gain from your apprenticeship, not what you gain from the qualification. Don't talk about it as a BSc. Talk about it as an apprenticeship, because it's really important we shift this image perception. Careers advice at school is woeful around apprenticeships. You're going to hear probably more from Katie about that, but many teachers don't understand them either, and so therefore they don't actually encourage school people to think or consider apprenticeships. And that is something that, with the portal that Phil mentioned, that UCAS are developing, hopefully there is going to be more awareness happening, and we can get more young people to really think about apprenticeships as an option. Then there's the degree and the degree apprenticeship, and there's the whole discourse around vocational learning, and is it on a parity with academic degrees? And that needs to shift, that needs to stop. We shouldn't stop comparing them. We shouldn't stop saying, what are they equivalent to? We should be thinking about them for what they deliver and the outcomes that they produce. And so that's another thing that, as we say, this kind of call for action from all of you. Talk about what came out of your programs. This is about really kind of employer kind of strain that so many organisations are saying, but they're quite hard to do. They're quite hard to deliver. And they are. And you do need to be, invested in bringing in young people and bringing in that talent. But training providers will work with you. Training providers will make it happen. And the benefits to you as an organisation, you're getting someone, particularly with sales organisations, who you're training, but they're also bringing in revenue at the same time. You can make it a win-win. And we talk about attracting talent through apprenticeships, no debt. retaining them because you've helped them develop and you have another path for their career. And the last one, I just think is absolutely shocking, to be honest, but the amount of unspent levy was at 3.3 billion that was returned to the Treasury. That's 3.3 billion pounds that could have been spent on skills development for young people, for people in your organisation who want to become managers, and it's not being used. And the other thing is we don't know where that money goes. It just kind of goes back to Treasury and there's no transparency, and who knows what's happening with it. So we need to make the most of the levy. We really need to be using it.
And just building on that point about the levy and the benefit back to employers, there's a correlation between employees who are prepared to invest time, effort and energy into their own learning and those who are your top performers is proven and strong. Stephen Covey was saying it years ago when he wrote The 7 Habits, for goodness sake. So it's self-evident. The interesting question, and I was having this conversation with somebody at lunchtime, is whether they are your top performers because they're the kind of people who want to learn, or whether the learning makes them your top performers. Frankly, I don't think it matters, because if they want to learn and you're providing that, then they're going to stay with you. And if you're developing them and making them even better, then you're winning. It doesn't really matter which end of the equation you're coming out at.
Okay.
But the other reasons why the sales apprenticeships are so low, first of all, and I hear myself having to say it again, but this residual mindset that people have towards sales. The young Gen Z people coming into the workplace, they're looking for a workplace which gives them flexibility. They're looking for a workplace which values social diversity and equality. They're looking for a workplace which is going to offer them development. They're looking for a workplace which is going to listen to them. And for some bizarre reason, they don't equate that to sales. Now, I've been in sales for more years than I can probably count, but that's exactly what I experienced all the way through my sales career. It's what all of us experience in sales. Sales is probably the most meritocratic profession you could possibly enter into in the workplace. And there are no very few barriers to who can do what, and everybody thrives on their success. It is one of the most honest professions you can be in, but for some reason, the young people coming into the workplace don't believe it's the right thing for them. And there's a big requirement for all of us to change that narrative so that people understand actually that sales is a fabulous profession to come into. And again, we're repeating the point again, but that placing and positioning of sales in education at both secondary and tertiary level is just so critical. Because one of the challenges we have as a profession is that actually our government doesn't understand us. If you look at government talking about business-to-business sales, we're lumped in with retail, with customer service, and not that there is nothing wrong with those professions, but actually business-to-business sales is a hugely different occupation to those professions. But government doesn't see it. So unless we bang on about that, unless we are really firm about what we believe business-to-business sales is, and unless as employers you actually give a united voice to government about that, it's unlikely to change. The Institute of Sales Professionals will bleat on about it until the cows come home, and that's what the government expect us to do, so they don't listen. But actually, if the employers, the businesses who are driving the economy for them, the businesses who are going to lead us into our recovery from the current state that we're in, are saying to them, you need to be taking our salespeople seriously, then they might just listen. It is a concerted effort from all of us.
Very quickly, I always like to bring a model into the presentations that I give here, and many of you will recognise this if you've been on our programmes as Stephen Covey's circle of concern and circle of control. For those of you that don't know this, we all have a wide range of concerns, and some of them we can do something about, and some of them we just can't. And what happens is that we put in when we start to write them down, we can have this outer circle, which actually we recognise they're the ones we can't influence, we can't do much about. But what we start to think about in terms of, I'm going to just skip through, not talk through those because of time, but obviously they're the big macro issues and concerns that we have. What we can start to influence is what Patrick and I have been alluding to. We can start to educate more people about apprenticeships. We can start to educate more people about how valuable sales is to the economy. And we need to start having that influence with the schools and the universities. And I suppose this is where we really have what is our call for action and call for support from you. and what we think and how we think you can help us with that.
So the ISP is this that provides the secretariat for the APPG. That's the All-Party Parliamentary Group in Sales. It's currently not meeting because I've gathered there's something going on at Westminster at the moment that's distracting people's attentions from them. But the last meeting of it failed to be quorate. There were not sufficient MPs present to actually allow the meeting to take place. If employers are saying to their MPs, actually, this is important, we want you to be there, we're going to be there, we were there, where were you? Then all of a sudden MPs will start to turn up. So it's there, and on the basis we use it or lose it, it's really important. If you believe that you want to influence government thinking around our profession, that's a direct channel into government. Please support it. We need you to be ambassadors for sales apprenticeships, and in a magnanimous gesture, not just sales apprenticeships, but all sales education. You know, it's just so important. And to change that narrative about sales, we've got to stop being apologetic. We've got to start just assuming that people recognise sales as a profession, because until we start saying it, people won't begin to hear it. Absolutely got to change the narrative.
Okay, and I think if I just had to sum up with one phrase, I would ask you all to talk about apprenticeships and really make people aware of them and the benefits they can provide. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.